Hello, Spilling the Sweet Tea fam. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm spilling the tea on how to make this smothered pork chop biscuit. When I tell y'all this was so good, and y'all already know, I mean country cooking business anytime I have my muumuu on, or caftan, whatever you guys call it. This one belongs to my mom, so I always feel so close to her anytime I wear it, especially when I'm cooking. So to get started on my smothered pork chop biscuits, I am using some thin cut center chopped pork chops that I got from Food Lion. In my opinion, the key to making good smothered pork chops is using thin cut pork chops. If you use thick cut pork chops, you're not going to get them as tender as you would using thin cut pork chops. And baby, that's the key to a good smothered pork chop, making sure it's nice and tender. I am going to debone my pork chops because I'm serving it on a biscuit. You can already get them deboned, but I already had these in my refrigerator, so I could just easily debone them myself. Now, y'all already know in my house, swine is fine. I do eat pork in moderation, but if you do not eat pork, you can certainly use turkey chops instead of pork chops. All I was doing was just cutting off the bone and a little bit of the fat, because baby, you are not going to need that. Go ahead and throw that away. I didn't cut all the fat off. I like a little bit of fat on my pork chop, but the majority of the fat I did cut off. You want to make sure you're using a sharp knife to get that bone out and any additional fat that you want to cut off. I have this Cuisinart knife set that I got from Amazon that I absolutely love. Smothered pork chops was a dish that my mom always made growing up. She never served it on a biscuit, but this sandwich is served in my hometown at a cafe called Lovex. Lovex Cafe has been in the Kinston community for years. They are famous for their breakfast, and they're also famous for their dough burgers. So if you ever come through Kinston, North Carolina, make sure to stop to Lovex and get a bite to eat. So now what I'm going to do is season my pork chops. Look how raggedy my black pepper bottle is. I need to get me another one. But I'm just seasoning my pork chops with a little bit of salt and a little bit of black pepper. You can also use white pepper as well. Normally when I cook, I use freshly cracked black pepper. But when I'm frying pork chops or frying chicken, I use the ground black pepper that you can find in the grocery store. So the next thing I'm going to use is some garlic powder. I normally use roasted garlic powder. I'm out, so I'm just using some regular garlic powder to season my pork chops. Y'all, I am a garlic girl, so I love a lot of garlic on my food. The next thing I'm going to season with is some paprika. Can y'all not tell I get so much joy being in the kitchen? I love cooking and sharing recipes with you guys so much. It is truly, truly my happy place. So all I used was salt, pepper, garlic powder, and paprika. You can use whatever seasonings you like. The main thing you want to make sure is you season it well, and you season it on both sides. And baby, don't nobody want no unseasoned pork chops. So this is me seasoning the other side of my pork chops with the same seasoning: salt, pepper, garlic powder, and paprika. Sometimes I use onion powder, but I'm not a huge fan of onion powder. I don't know why. Like in certain dishes, I'll use onion powder. It just depends. Y'all, look at this raggedy black pepper bottle. I got to get me a new black pepper bottle. This thing is about toe to pieces. The one thing about me when I cook, sometimes I use different seasonings for the same dish. Like I've made smothered pork chops a million times. Sometimes I'll use Tony's, or sometimes I'll season them the way I'm seasoning them here. It just depends on my mood and how many steps I want to go through. To batter my pork chops, I'm just adding some plain all-purpose flour to a bowl. And I'm going to season my flour with the same seasonings I use for my pork chops. Y'all, I am not measuring here, but the full recipe and all of the measurements are in my cookbook, Memories on a Plate. As I mentioned earlier, smothered pork chops was a dish that my mother always made. Smothered pork chops and her cube steak were two of my favorite recipes that she would make for dinner. So I made sure to include the smothered pork chops recipe in my cookbook, Memories on a Plate, Southern recipes I learned from my mama. So now I have all of my seasonings in my bowl. I'm just going to whisk everything up until it's well combined. Oh yeah, there's the cookbook. You can grab it from the link in my bio. I think you'll love it. It's 50 Southern recipes. The shipping is free. The cookbook is dedicated to my late mother, and it's also a reflection of my Eastern North Carolina roots. So now I'm just cleaning my eggs. My mom taught me to do this. Anytime I am using eggs in any dish, cooking eggs, I clean my eggs. I get that, what I call egg snot, from my eggs. You can do whatever you want to do when you're making your eggs, but I do this exact same thing every time I'm using an egg. I clean it out. I got to get the egg snot out. Because I only have 4 little pork chops, I'm just using 1 egg. But in the cookbook, I think I have 2 beaten eggs. All you want to do is whisk it up until the eggs are beaten, just like this. Now all you want to do is take your seasoned pork chops and dip them in your egg. And then dip your pork chops in your seasoned flour. That's it. That's all. I'm just using my egg as a binder. You can use mustard. You can use whatever you want, but I just like using egg. So I'm just dredging my pork chop into my flour, and I'm going to set it on this rack so it can dry out a little bit. Anytime you're frying food, you don't want to coat your food in flour and then immediately put it into hot grease. You want to let it sit for a little bit, because if you put it in the hot grease immediately, your flour is going to just fall off in the oil, and that's what you don't want. So I just have a regular baking tray or cookie sheet, and then I just have this wire rack sitting on top of my cookie sheet. These are both items that you should have in your kitchen. If you don't, I'll have them listed in my Amazon storefront. These are definitely 2 kitchen items that I use all the time because I love to bake my bacon. So anytime I'm baking my bacon, I use this baking rack and I use a baking tray. And like I said, I also use it anytime I'm frying something. I put whatever I'm frying on this little rack until I'm ready to fry it. Now, baby, I'm going to fry my pork chops in a cast iron skillet. That's just how I was taught. I always fry my pork chops in a cast iron skillet. One thing about me, I am not going to veer off from a Shirley May way. My mom is the one who taught me how to cook. So a lot of the dishes that I make, I cook them the way she cooked them, using the techniques as well as the tools that she used when she would cook. Now that you have all of your pork chops seasoned, you just want to set them aside and allow them to rest. And now I'm going to get started on my biscuits. But baby, before I get started on these biscuits, I have got to clean this countertop. My mama always used to say cleanliness is next to godliness. I also want to make sure I have cleaned my countertop well, because anytime I'm making my biscuits, I roll my biscuits out on my counter. So I'm just going to clean my countertop before I start making my biscuits. I am rolling out my biscuits because I want my biscuits to have structure. Anytime my mom made biscuits, she would use the drop biscuit method, so she wouldn't roll and cut them out. But you can make them any way you want. I'm just making them this way today because I want the biscuits to be tall and fluffy. And of course, I'm using my Miss Lena's Biscuit Bowl to make my biscuits, and using my Miss Lena's Buttermilk Biscuit Mix. Miss Lena's is the food brand that was produced by me, Spilling the Sweet Tea. You can find the biscuit mix on Amazon, but the biscuit bowl is only on my website. So all you want to do is just open up your biscuit mix and just dump it into your biscuit bowl. The Miss Lena's Biscuit Bowl is a replica of the bowl that I saw my mother use my entire childhood to make her biscuits. I would get so many questions about the bowl. My husband and I decided to replicate it so you guys could have it in your home. Anytime you're rolling out biscuits, you want to make sure you're using very cold butter. My butter is actually frozen because I make so many biscuits all the time. I always keep a couple sticks of butter in my freezer. And I always use this rotary grater because it makes it so much easier. Baby, I love this grater. I be grating carrots, potatoes, butter, cheese. It's amazing. And yes, I dance when I find things that are efficient and make my life easy in the kitchen. This grater is great because it suctions down onto your countertop and it does not move. I absolutely love it. So once you have your butter grated into your biscuit mix, all you want to do is give it a really good mix. I actually love the height of this bowl because it works perfectly with this rotary grater. These two are definitely a match made in heaven because it makes it so much easier for me to make my biscuits. But if you don't have one of these, you can just use a box grater. I'm using a fork because that's how my mother would make her biscuits. She would blend everything together with a fork. You can use your hands. I see people making biscuits all the time and they're using their hands. I'm just using the way that my mother taught me how to do it and the way I saw her make her biscuits. This is the Shirley May way, and I'm always going to stick beside the way my mama did things. The lights that I have in my kitchen is making it so hard to see the flour that I have in this bowl, but all I'm doing is mixing up the butter with the flour. You want to work pretty fast because the butter is frozen. You also want to make sure you're using very cold buttermilk as well. As long as your ingredients are very cold, your biscuits are going to be very fluffy. I'm giving my buttermilk a shake, and I'm just going to add 1 cup of buttermilk. I believe this is low-fat buttermilk. You can use any type of buttermilk you want, low-fat or whole milk. Or whole buttermilk. Or if you don't have buttermilk, just use whole milk and add 1 tablespoon of white vinegar to it. Once you add the white vinegar, you just want to give it a stir and let it sit for a little bit, and then you have buttermilk. Anytime I add my buttermilk into my biscuit mixture, I'm always going to make a well in the middle of my flour mixture. Once again, that's the Shirley May way. My mother will always make a well in the middle of her biscuit mixture or her flour mixture, and then she would add her buttermilk. Once the buttermilk is in the well, you just want to start pulling the flour mixture or the biscuit mix mixture from the sides into the center of the bowl. This allows you to slowly incorporate the flour into the buttermilk. You just want to keep working your buttermilk with your butter and your biscuit mix until everything starts to come together and forms a dough. If you find that things are still too dry and are not coming together, just add another splash of buttermilk. Normally 1 cup is the amount you need, but sometimes I'll add maybe another tablespoon or 2 just so it comes together well. Once your dough has come together, you just want to knead it a few times. After you have your biscuits ready, you just want to prepare your surface to be able to roll them out. You want to make sure you're working with a well-floured surface. So all I'm doing is just adding some all-purpose flour to my countertop. I'm using my hands to spread the flour all over the countertop so the biscuit dough does not stick to the counter as I'm rolling them out. Because I'm making a biscuit sandwich, I'm using a rolling pin to roll out my biscuits. You want to make sure that you flour your rolling pin. That's going to be very important. So add some flour to your rolling pin before you start rolling out your biscuits. All right, so here's the tea on how to roll out your biscuits. The first thing you want to do, like I said, is have a flour rolling pin and roll them out to about 1 inch thick. Once you roll out your biscuits, you then want to fold your biscuits. You just want to fold it over once. I'm using a different method today because I saw somebody just fold it once and then turn it and then roll their biscuits out again. Normally when I make my biscuits, I fold it 3 times, but I wanted to give this method a try today. So all I did was fold it once and then turned it, and then I'm just going to repeat that process once again. Y'all, making homemade biscuits is so easy. Just like anything else you're making in the kitchen, practice makes perfect. But baby, once you get it right, I can guarantee you, you will never go back to a Pillsbury Grand's nothing. Because a homemade biscuit is always going to trump them canned biscuits any day of the week. So I'm continuing to roll, fold, and turn my biscuit dough. I think I did this process a total of 4 times. The more you do it, the taller and the fluffier your biscuit will be. Like I said, because I'm making a biscuit sandwich, I want my biscuits to be fairly tall so they fit nicely with the pork chop. And there's a nice thickness of biscuit versus pork chop. A very good ratio. Okay, so this is the final time that I'm rolling it out. You can actually see the layers at the bottom of the screen. The layers are giving. When I tell you these biscuits came out so good. Now it's time to cut out your biscuits. If you don't have a biscuit cutter, that is okay. You can just use a glass. All you want to make sure you do is you just cut straight down. Don't twist your biscuits. Just cut straight down. Because if you twist, your biscuits are not going to rise properly. Baby, look at them layers in that biscuit. Oh my God, these turned out so good. Now all you want to do is continue rolling and cutting out your biscuits until you've used all of the dough. I made my biscuits pretty big just because I'm making a pork chop sandwich. I normally wouldn't cut my biscuits this big, but I want to say I got about 8 large biscuits out of this biscuit dough. With my leftover dough, all I'm going to do is repeat that same method and cut my biscuits out like I did the first time. Just go straight down, 1 and then 2. Press it right down and lift right up. Today, I'm using a baking tray, but most of the time I use a cast iron skillet to bake my biscuits. It really doesn't matter. Just use what you have. I just greased my baking tray and added my biscuits to my baking tray. Look at the layers. They are certainly giving. When I tell you I was so excited about how good these biscuits look, I'll really be so hyped when my food turns out well. All I'm going to do is just make sure my biscuits have enough space. And now all I'm going to do is brush on some melted butter on top of my biscuits. If you want a browner biscuit, just brush on some egg wash on top of your biscuit. If you don't want your biscuit to brown too much, just brush on a little bit of melted butter. My mama would always crack me up because anytime she would go to like Bojangles and get a biscuit sandwich, she would always ask for a dark brown biscuit. Baby, my mama did not like no light-skinned biscuits. I don't know what it was with a dark brown biscuit, but she had to have one. I have set my oven to 450 to bake my biscuits. These biscuits don't take long at all. Normally between 13 to 15 minutes, you have perfectly brown buttermilk biscuits. Look how pretty they are. So while my biscuits are baking in the oven, I'm just going to work on my pork chops. My pork chops have had ample time to sit on that wire rack, and now they are ready to fry. All I did was add a little bit of oil to my cast iron skillet, heated everything up over medium-high heat. You notice once I turn my pork chops over, the breading does not fall off. That is because I allowed my pork chops to sit on that wire rack for a little bit before I fried. And baby, these look absolutely delicious just by themselves, but of course I got to smother it down in some gravy. So all I'm doing is removing my pork chops from the skillet, and then I'm going to remove a lot of this oil so I can get started on my gravy. You don't want too much oil in your skillet. Turn your skillet up to medium heat and then just add your flour into your skillet just like that. Now all you want to do is just whisk your oil with your flour. You want to whisk, whisk, whisk until your flour is completely mixed in with the oil. You want to make sure your flour cooks out. So you just want to make sure you continue to mix. And then I also let my flour cook because I like my gravy dark brown. I don't like light skin gravy. So I like my gravy dark brown. So the longer it cooks, the browner it will get. If you've ever made a roux, this is the exact same method. So if you're used to making a roux like for a gumbo, this is exactly the same thing you want to do. Just whisk, whisk, whisk until your gravy starts to brown. Now we're not going to let it brown to the color we would for gumbo, but I like mine fairly dark brown. This is the color I'm looking for. You see how it changed to a darker brown? This is the color that I am looking for. So now I'm going to add my water. You can add beef broth, chicken broth, whatever you want. My mama always added water to her gravy. And you see how that thing is bubbling? Make sure you stand back so you do not get burned. I added more water because it was giving real thick to me. So I added a little bit more water. And then once I have my gravy looking like I want it to look, I'm just going to season my gravy. I just season my gravy with lots of black pepper and then a little bit of salt. You can use whatever seasoning you like. I'm just using a lot of ground black pepper and some salt. Now that you have your gravy the way you like it, you just want to add your pork chops into that gravy. So all I'm going to do is add my pork chops into the gravy and let them simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes until they get nice and tender. When I'm making smothered pork chops for a meal, like if I'm serving it with rice or mashed potatoes, I normally add some sliced onions in my gravy, but because I'm putting it on a biscuit, I didn't do that today. But baby, look at these biscuits. Look how beautiful these biscuits turned out. Do y'all see the layers in these biscuits? They came out absolutely perfect. I'm just going to add some more melted butter to the top of my biscuit. When I tell you these biscuits came out so good, they were absolutely delicious. Now to make my sandwich, all I'm going to do is cut my biscuit in half. I don't even have to cut them in half. All I have to do is just pull them apart. Look at these flaky layers in this biscuit. They look absolutely beautiful. Once I have my biscuit open, all I'm going to do is just add my smothered pork chop. And like I said earlier in this video, if you are anywhere near my hometown of Kinston, North Carolina, you can certainly go to Love's Cafe and get your own pork chop and gravy biscuit or smothered pork chop biscuit, whatever you want to call it. But this is me recreating one of their signature dishes because I no longer live in Kinston. I live in Maryland, but I was craving this pork chop biscuit. This turned out so good. Definitely a 10 out of 10. Only on YouTube will you see me eat on camera. I have got to taste this smothered pork chop biscuit, so I'm giving it a try. Baby, when I tell you this was so good, it took me right back to my hometown. The biscuit was tender and fluffy, and the smothered pork chop was perfectly seasoned. You just got the tea on how to make a pork chop and gravy biscuit. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next recipe. And to grab a copy of my cookbook, Memories on a Plate, just go to my website, spillingthesweettea.com. The shipping is free and it includes 50 of my favorite Southern recipes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.